Hello, day 173 of a screenwriter's journey is the longest in recent memory. I had a feeling there was a long one coming up, and this appears to be it. And like any good long day, it literally starts at the beginning of the script almost. Um, I think yesterday, at least on day 172, it may have not been literally yesterday, the last edition, I had written some stuff in my outline, kind of um, crystallizing maybe the character. And what I think I'm maybe going back to do is trying to make, especially Rachel and maybe to some extent Holly, a little more focused. Rachel has been, we've definitely, I have landed on her as a narcissistic psychopath. So she will do anything to better herself, including what she does at the very beginning, which is giving up her little girl. And then we come way back, or we go way ahead to the future, which is the present in the majority of the script. And she is manipulating Holly and then eventually her daughter to basically sell her daughter down the river, so she can get a bunch of money and go off and have a grand old life. And as shallow as that sounds, and obviously, what could be more shallower than doing what she is planning to do? There are people like that, and so there. um, so I think that's kind of what I'm going to do. And I wrote for like over 2.5 hours this day, which is whatever, 30, 40 minutes of time sped up at 5x. So hopefully I got a lot of work done this day, and maybe I'm bringing this iteration of the screenplay kind of into where it currently is. But I'm looking, January 15th is when I was writing this, and it will be early March when this goes on YouTube. So 6 weeks ish. So we'll see. I am kind of excited to see, because again, this was a while ago, and it's kind of neat. Sometimes it's neat, sometimes it's sad to look back and see where I was, and if I've come anywhere, if I've regressed, progressed, or congressed. That is a good old political joke. What's the opposite of progress? Congress. All right. So let me see if I'm actually changing much here. All right. So this is when they've met. We know. So we've seen a snippet of Holly in her present day. She's playing volleyball. You know, a little snippet of her life, not a whole lot. And then she talks with Lexi, and we kind of get a snippet of her life. Again, you know, I could have a scene where she is just doing her thing in high school, and then, the group home where she lives. But they're the foster, because she's not in a foster home. She's in a group home with other kids that haven't been placed. Excuse me. But since hopefully this is Holly's story, this, when they're talking together and we hear some of the backstory of how many schools she's gone to and the parents, and then their plans for her birthday. It's not, it's not a party. It's kind of a celebration. And then inciting incident / catalyst, Rachel calls and tells Holly that things are changing, deteriorating. So now this here, see, this, I don't know if I've changed this. They moved up his supervised release. I think this is still a little bit too in the weeds, because I think Holly would know. I don't think she would be caught. Well, I mean, she could be caught off guard, but I would assume she has told someone if anything happens with this guy's prison sentence, if it, his parole comes up or something, 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 let me know, because she would want to kind of keep track of him, because obviously the way it's been laid out is that she and Rachel have been talking for a couple years, depending on who you can believe. But at this point in the script, we understand that through the conversation with Holly and Rachel, and then with Holly and Lexi, that Holly and Rachel have been in communication for a couple years. Rachel's said that she wants to see her. Whether that's entirely true, we have to assume it is, unless we hear differently, which we kind of might later on. But so what I'm trying to do is, back to my original point of the day, is trying to really get Rachel, so literally everything she says is manipulation. And so as I go through here, she's either accusing Holly of something on the one hand, or she's trying to butter her up and tell her what a great person she is, what a great done, or she's trying to say, oh my gosh, why are you doing this? So she's really trying to pull her chain, or whatever euphemism you choose to use. And I kind of went through that scene quickly on page 12, because now I'm on 13. But the idea was that Holly is really kind of being set up by Rachel to do everything she can to get Lexi to agree to meet with her, for reasons that will become apparent when they do. Okay, so they're walking. Holly has just told Lexi a bunch of stuff. It doesn't look like a lot of this has changed. She's 18, so she has the decision. And it's interesting, as I've said, this is kind of the debate section of the script, according to Save the Cat. And right now it looks like Lexi is the one debating, but really, maybe I'm forcing this into my thought, is that Holly has the choice. Is she going to do what Rachel said? Is she going to try to get these two together? Why would she? And the debate kind of is, have I raised, even though she hasn't technically raised, have I been a good enough, positive enough influence in Lexi's life that, given this choice, she'll A, make the right decision, and then B, react when things happen. And so Holly is sort of putting her to the test, and at the same time, she really is hoping that Lexi will make the right decisions, and in the process of that will choose probably not to, really strike up a long-term relationship with her mom and not become dependent on Holly by any means. But Holly will come away from this thinking, oh yes, what I've done in being kind of a role model to her has really paid off. That is a big bite a big piece to bite off and to chew on. And it's a lot easier to say that than obviously deliver that through the story and through dialogue without getting preachy and, just lines after lines, which, interesting enough, what I'm writing currently that I'll be commentating on whenever is much, much later in the script. And there is a lot of dialogue kind of bringing all this out. And I'm sure I'm going to have to cut that way down. All right. So we take two cars. So we're setting up what's going to happen. That they're going to go to the go-kart place, and then they're going to stop at Eagle Creek on the way back. And I didn't realize I'd already written this little bit where Holly and Lexi are talking at the same time. I thought that was, unless I was too busy talking, I didn't watch myself write it. But so the idea there, of course, is you've got Lexi and Abby, and then parallel to that, you've got Holly talking to Katina, and then they end up not literally together, but they're talking about kind of the same thing. And when they talk to each other, it gets to that point where it really sets up what's going to happen. All right. I hope that made sense because it went by pretty quick. So now Holly is talking to Rachel, and as you see, I really need to chop this down as expected. Okay, so Holly says a lot there at the bottom of 19, but I think it really, and maybe I can chop that down some more. But basically, after communicating with the deputy U.S. Marshal, super helpful person again, that's kind of how she more or less explained that it would happen. And so Holly has set this up, and Holly's being proactive and all that stuff about having to record their conversation and blah, blah, blah. So that definitely did help shorten this. And then we also set up the fact that I think, well, she is leaving witness security, Rachel is, and so the U.S. government, nor anyone in its employ, is responsible for your safety, which is the official way of saying, I'm all you've got, which is what Rachel is confirming when she says, but our off-the-record agreement still stands. And then Holly, diplomatically or whatever you would say, says, you have my word of all I've ever wanted. So in the previous conversation, Rachel was being very accusatory and, we got to do this, we got to do this. And now Rachel is like bending over backwards to butter her up. I can't thank you enough. You're sure I can't reimburse you a gift? You have a kind soul. So she is manipulating Holly. So she is, period. She's manipulating Holly. So my question to myself is the fact that Holly is not seeing through this, or maybe she doesn't think there's anything to see through, or maybe the audience won't. Maybe they say, wow, that Rachel's a pretty nice person, which would be interesting if they did, and maybe some would. I don't know. That will be when I keep cutting myself off in mid-sentence. But the other interesting thing is that nobody has read, I haven't showed this, of course it's not done, so I can't, but I haven't showed the new first 10 pages, the first act, anyone to anything. And so when the people who've read this previously, which a few of them will read it again, at least a couple of them, will they say, oh my gosh, this sucks. Why did you spend 6 months rewriting this, which is what it's going to end up being probably. October, November, yeah, pretty much. Or will they say, oh, wow, this is super deep and you are an awesome writer? I say that totally tongue in cheek. Not that I'm not, but no. But so it's kind of scary to think I've really completely reworked this. Literally completely reworked this. And what will they think? Will they go, we're not sure if Rachel is a double-handed, got a screw loose, or if she's, a nice person and Holly's trying to help her, or, oh my gosh, Holly's so stupid, why can't she see through this? And so I'm just really rolling the dice to some extent. But at least my point is clear, at least in my own mind, that Rachel is, the narcissistic psychopath, sociopath or psychopath or psychotic. I don't know the official word, but so now we set up the fact that let's see here. So Holly's just talked to Rachel. So now Holly's calling Paul. Guys, I have to make sure he stays put, just so we're clear. This is the last favor I ever do for you. Yeah, until the next one. I don't know if that dialogue stands in my current draft, but I kind of like that. This is the last favor I ever do to you till the next one. You're lucky I never had a daughter, which I think speaks exactly to what is going on, how he feels about it. I think that needs to be tweaked a little. So, again, in this version, and this hasn't changed, Jake and Luke this is the first time we've met him, obviously. And Jake is immediately drawn, and, vice versa, Lexi drawn to Jake. And so they're immediately kind of flirting with their eyes, maybe with their voices, if the actors and actresses are good enough. And then, so Jake's line, "Can I be 100% blunt?" And I know I didn't just write this, but at once it shows, he talks about how beautiful she is. He doesn't know anything about her. And so does that make him shallow, or does that make him kind of like, wow, he doesn't, beat around the bush. He cuts to the chase. So I'm not changing much here. But we're setting up. And so really, yeah, page 25, literally, that is a break into two, girls and boys and girls. So they're, Holly has been, I think, proactive here. She's, set this thing up. She's got Lexi to go along. She set it up with Rachel. And now she's met the boys. And we've already saw Abby. So now they're going out of their comfort zone. They're going away from that which she has control over to a certain extent. And so now we're into the fun and games and the B story. So the question is, fun and games could be considered the go-karting, getting to the cabins, and the stuff that happens between now and page 50-ish. Is the B story question, is it a love story in the making between Jake and Lexi? Is it a love story in the making between Holly and Hogan? Or is it something else? Is it a combination of those? Can you have multiple B stories? Obviously, I would say the answer to that is yes, to the extent that I will succeed or am succeeding is obviously a totally open question. Or, and I don't even think I presented this, is it a buddy picture between Lexi and Holly? And I'll answer that by saying it may kind of start out that way, but obviously it's not going to last, because by the midpoint they are going to be separated. Lexi finally off eye contact. That really makes a lot of sense. So this is, oh good. So I cut out that whole idea of her speeding. I realized that I didn't need it, especially when I have this new hook here where they make this deal. Well, I've been talking for 19 minutes and 14 seconds, and my voice, I can feel it getting scratchy. Okay. So I'm changing this because no longer... Well, I guess they're doing 80. So the speeding isn't a real big thing because they are keeping up with them to some extent. I mean, they're, a minute behind them, or, well, if they were a minute behind, they'd be a mile behind, so they couldn't see them. But That's not a big deal. When we took her in. So this is, I'm still kind of working through this dialogue, but getting out the idea that Jake and Luke are, and probably Luke to a greater extent, this whole conspiracy thing that they are caught up in. Well, they're not caught up in it, but they have a kind of a tendency toward that line of thought, and Abby is poo-pooing it. Does you in the airport news network. So Jake is trying to come off of this, come at this at a more practical standpoint. That he wants to know more about Lexi. It is super interesting. I mentioned before the thought process that goes in when you're literally writing, and again, I should know all this when I come into the scene and not have to be rewriting character or dialogue based on characters that I'm not sure of. But at the same time, as I've said very often, this is how I do it. So I must say, as an aside, that while I didn't expect many people to watch this on YouTube, I did have a fantasy that 5 or 10 or 20 people would get hooked on it, and every day I'd have, an appropriate, or what's the right word, according, my views would be accordingly, like I'd get 5 to 10 to 20 views a day, and then people go, oh my gosh, you got to watch this, it's super insightful. Obviously I have not found the audience for that yet. So I'm still kind of working this out. Not super in love with that thing about squeezing her for intel. A little levity there, even though it's not a purposeful joke, but I think it could kind of be funny. Now that first part about getting the ticket, I think I need to get rid of that, because that doesn't really play a factor anymore. Then we get the cocky Jake here. Man, I'm just suddenly yawning like 4 times in the last couple minutes. Pardon the silence. I'm just reading what I'm writing here. Yeah, see, I don't know, Jake. Sort of asking that question. Sounds like Popeye. On behalf of he and Luke, but would he really do that? All right, now I'm bringing in this whole thing of what Jake is studying a lot sooner. Haven't gotten or haven't had. So now the reason this comes out earlier is it was way too convenient that just as about when they were going to go up to the cabin, about get there, Jake's like, oh, it would be great if I could do that because blah, blah, blah. So now, whether this works or not, he's just coming right out and telling her because we've already got the impression he kind of is a forward, lay your chips on the table kind of person. Luke's still beating the drum of she's a fed of some sort. Then they still make the bet about I'll answer a question. Whoever loses answers a question. Holly at the bottom of 35 is leaving all the decisions to Lexi like she said she was going to, although if you really think about it, she kind of didn't really goad her, but kind of persuaded her in a way. So this has changed quite substantially because Lexi is offering to Jake right there, just based on their short time together, if he would like to meet her, which obviously very unusual, but maybe is justifiable given what we know about both of them. And I don't know how much Lexi's, she's not really insecure, but she doesn't seem insecure and fragile, but really given her upbringing and everything, it wouldn't be surprising that maybe she would do something like this. Just sitting here reading. I do. I like Jake saying I do. So that is definitely changed. And I don't love this maybe, or maybe I do because I don't know if I come back and change anything. But hopefully that is realistic enough that the audience will buy in and literally go along for the ride with them. Luke, I don't know if that line will make it, but that's kind of funny. Oh. Okay, try to keep up. So that I've hung on to that line. I think it's still kind of meaningful. So really, the trip up, just thinking out loud, the road trip up to the go-kart place, the go-kart conversation, the race, and the aftermath has taken up almost half of the fun and games section. And that's when Blake Snyder says you have to deliver the promise of the premise. And that's always been a little mysterious to me. That's when he said, like, you have the big set pieces, maybe a car chase or something. And I don't know I mean, obviously, literally, well, a car chase could be the go-kart race. But there's nothing like that. And I don't even know if metaphorically or symbolically or whatever you want to say, I don't know if I've got anything like that. There is, and I've said this before, there's a lot of dialogue in this script. I just watched Free Guy last night. I kind of I sat there. I don't know that I was awake for the whole thing, but there's a lot of dialogue in that movie. I thought it was okay. I didn't love it. So they're on their way, and Jake's in back, and so it's still set up that Jake has got to answer a question still. Excuse me, and obviously the question is, how many girls have you slept with, or are you a virgin or something? And it's a super forward question if that indeed was it. And so on the one hand, I kind of like it just because it's like, so wow, what did they ask him? Even though we didn't hear the question, I think it could still have a big impact. But would a conversation like that really happen between a girl and a boy, a young man, young woman, whatever you want to call them, and this midish, latish 30s woman? I don't know. That would be one of those things where my readers, peer reviewers, or whatever you want to call them, might say, "Oh my gosh, what are you even thinking? That would never happen." All right, so we're back here, and Luke is still kind of beating the old drum there. There's some on the nose dialogue. Lexi's been through a lot. Please get rid of that. So now they're sort of talking on two different topics, two different wavelengths. They're not really, I mean, at the beginning, they're not 100% talking to each other. They're just basically talking. And that is a clever way, if done right, of getting kind of twice as much information out. Because you don't necessarily have to give a question, answer, because they could be answering their own questions, but on two different topics. Isn't that clever? And then you have the classic misunderstanding. I do if she's ex-military. Then we got the whole leaves for college in a couple of weeks. Am I going to leave that in? Uh-oh. Search and replace. Always dangerous. Don't love that. All right. Well, as I write this little bit, man, this is for 33 minutes. It's gone by pretty quickly. I'm glad we're done here because I need a little vocal vacation, alliteration, contemplation, gestation. All right. Thanks for joining me. Obviously, we're not done yet. See you next time.